things like cigarettes and miraa and mogoka, they become gateway drugs, like, and alcohol as well. So when you're doing them, if you're looking for that getting high, it's it it sets your mind to want to get higher. And for me, uh, they 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 made me crave getting higher for longer and more intense highs. So my parents had to take me to hospital, of course. They took me to Madare, and at Madare I stayed there for about almost 2 months, and
Inakuwaje watu wangu wa nguvu, mimi naitwa presenter Ali, your entertainment PA. The A is always for amazing siku zote. Natia bidii kuhakikisha kwamba nakuletea stories tofauti za burudani, and of course it's another episode fully and proudly sponsored by Bipolar KE. They have the best furniture. They are the #1 dealers in furniture here in Kenya, so reach out to them in case you need home furniture or office furniture, and tell them that presenter Ali sent you. Utakuwa umenipa support ya kutosha. Anyways, leo nitakuwa napiga story with one amazing guy anaitwa Kimani Mbuga, right? Yeah, and this guy has been trending for a while, and nimeona tu nimtafute, of course, tusikie story yake. I mean, it's a story that is going to touch your life. It's a story that is going to change your life, and also give you a different perspective about life. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Good to finally have you here. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Tumepanga sana, lakini I finally made it here.
Yeah. That's great. So I really don't know where to start, but I think where we can actually start is your story went viral, that you had been, jobless for a while after quitting Citizen TV because you were diagnosed with bipolar. I mean, it's a lot to process, but then how did it all start?
Well, for me, it started in the downward spiral started in 2020. That's when the wheels came off for me, health wise. I think after falling ill in 2020, I can only say I saw the light in in August of this year. That's when I can say that I felt now I'm a human being again. So for 3 years, I was having motions of sickness. The most trying 3 years of my life. They were extremely trying times. Losing your mind. In fact, you can be normal, you can act normal, or people can see that you're acting normal, but then you're very sick and you're so depressed, and you can become a functional mentally ill person, which is, I believe, what a lot of people are. A lot of people who are not diagnosed with mental illnesses, you're a functional mentally ill person. So for me, 2020 was the year that happened. Uh, I've said this before, where it's the moment on the 13th of March of 2023 to around, say, 18th, 19th of August this year, 2023. That was the duration that I was deep in the emotions of sickness, and it has been a very trying 3 years. Yeah.
How did it all happen, and what was the first instance like, if you can remember?
The first instance was, I was working at Citizen then. Of course, most people know me from Citizen. That's where I think my name got built. I got introduced to Kenyans. It's a big platform, and that's where I got introduced to Kenya and the world. And the incident that marked the beginning of the wheels coming off for me health-wise was in the afternoon of 13th March 2020, where I was driving home with my then girlfriend, and then I smoked a little bit of marijuana, and it finally completely triggered the onset of my bipolar, because I've had bipolar before. Like, the bipolar is there. It's something that is in my genetics. It's a genetic condition. Still, with bipolar, not a lot of people, even in the medical field, it's not very clear what causes bipolar. It's very hard to to even diagnose it and know that someone is suffering from bipolar. But for me, I know for sure, and from what my doctors have told me, is that mine could be genetic because I didn't have a huge drug problem. I wasn't a huge drug addict, but because I have it in my system, it gets triggered by drugs. Like as long as you have that bipolar problem within you, you mix it with any drug, you begin trending on very dangerous ground. And so for me, that day meant that it's significant day for me. I will never forget that
So
afternoon.
what happened after you smoked and you're driving?
I got psychotic. Being psychotic is seeing things that are not there, hearing things that are not there, and responding to the world in a way that you're responding to things that are not real. It's seeing and hearing and doing things, seeing and hearing things that are not real, and responding to them as if they were real and true. So that was my problem. So the line between reality and fiction is non-existent in when you become psychotic.
Do not know.
Yeah, you
You do not know if it's real or not.
yeah, you don't know if it's real or not. When you, as the one who's going through, the people around you can tell that it's not, well, you're responding to things that are not real, because on that afternoon I started, um, the first time that my mind completely went haywire was, um, I left the car I was driving. I got out of the car and started shouting and, looking at the world and doing salutes and feeling as if there's a huge, so, the your mind tells you that there's a huge military grade exercise in the world and you're part of that military exercise, and this is something that's not true. So you feel like you've been chosen to represent Kenya in that military exercise. There's nothing like that, and it's a delusion. But then your mind takes it seriously, and you start responding to that. So I left the car, started walking, and then my girlfriend who was inside the car called me back to like, "Yo, you're gonna crash or do something." So I went back. I went back in the car and we kept driving, but then at the junction of Raptor Road and Ring Road Kilimani, at that particular junction there, it's a special place for me. I usually, when I go there, it brings memories of the day that I caused an accident, because that's where I caused my first accident. I hit another car from behind because I didn't even know what was happening. I was completely out of my mind, and I I, it went off. I mean, and I can tell now, looking back from the vantage point of time, I know that from that day was the day that um, that I completely lost my mind. Before that, there were signs. There were signs before that, because I was recently going through my Google Photos, and I was seeing some of these photos from before 13th of March 2020, and I saw myself. I could see from the videos, the pictures, because I was taking a lot of videos alone. There's a time I was chewing mogoka alone in the car, and I was recording videos while driving, and I could see, and yeah, there were so many things that were happening, and I remember when I see those videos, I remember, okay, so this is what you were doing. You were behaving like this. You started smoking cigarettes. You started doing random. You started going on spending sprees. You started having problems with concentration. You started feeling more important than you actually are, and that's the grandiose. And also, I could see those signs and how the graph was just headed towards me crashing, until it came to the 13th of March 2020, when now everything came falling down, and On that day, I was taken to hospital. No, I was taken to hospital the next day, but on that particular night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing things and responding to delusions the whole night.
With your girlfriend still?
Yes, yes, I was with her that night, and the next morning she took me to hospital. She took me to hospital. She was like, she called my parents, called my dad and my mom, and my dad came to the hospital. I was admitted at Avenue Hospital on that morning, and from then life just became so unreal for me. It felt, it felt like I was in a movie set for the last 3 years. It felt like a movie set. It felt there are times when things would go back to normal, and I would gather the strength to continue working. Like after leaving Citizen, I left Citizen to join Kenyans.co.ke, the news company. And when I joined them, I had just recovered from the first heavy manic episode. Because the first manic episode lasted from that day, 13th of March 2020, to around August of that year, August of 2020. And for those 6 months, I was on a roller coaster that was only going up. And then after that, because bipolar has two sides, there's the mania side and the depression side. So on the August of that year, the pendulum now swung back to depression, and I was depressed for another 6 months. So I joined Kenyans.co.ke. Well, I wasn't completely okay. I was very depressed. I was unable to perform at par with what they were expecting because, you know, when I went in there, I was excited, you know, and even the bosses there were excited, you know, like we're having Kimani here. I hope he's going to be able to do what he was doing on Citizen TV with us and even grow bigger. But um, because of depression, I wasn't able to maintain that energy because I was depressed and I wasn't as productive as I was supposed to be. So I was only doing the bare minimum because I waking up from the bed was like it was such a huge task to wake up, and I couldn't hold it together. So I got again depressed for another about 6 months, and until
All this time you're going to the hospital?
I no for after this first manic episode between February no between March 13th of 2020 and August, um, that that was the last time I went to hospital was in around August or July August of 2020. That was the last time I went to hospital. I would later come to go back to hospital again in 2021 in November. This is after quitting Kenyans because after I joined them, I realized I couldn't be able to continue working. I wasn't at my best. I could feel I wasn't at my best. By that time, my girlfriend and I had broken up, and that relationship had ended. And for me, I started focusing on what is wrong with me. So I quit my job. I was like, I know something is really wrong with me, and I'm going to I'm not going to rest until I find out what it is. So I quit Kenyans, and I didn't have a plan B. I thought maybe I could go work for other companies that I had worked for, but I thought, but as soon as I got home after that last date, the 17th of September in 2021, I was like, I don't want to work. I don't want to work. I just want to sleep. I want to focus on myself. I want to know what is this monster that lives in my head that wants to finish me, and how can I fight it, and how can I take it on. And so I didn't take another job. I had savings that could take me for about 2, 3, 4 months. But then I started doing drugs. I went back to smoking weed. And as I told you, when you have bipolar, of course, I didn't know I had bipolar by then. At that time, it was only an illness that I couldn't understand, that was just disturbing me, and I wasn't comfortable with how I was. And so I went back to doing weed, and weed is a psychoactive drug. And when you have a mental health issue and you do a psychoactive drug, it becomes like adding fuel to fire. And for me, I was blown up again by the weed, and um, I was taken to hospital because I was completely delusional. I thought my parents were not my parents, and and I, the delusion started coming. I believe there's a certain thing that is, your mind is telling you there are things going on that you don't understand. You feel, and this is the mind of a crazy person. This is why people become dysfunctional and crazy, and they start walking on the road collecting papers, is because there's too much on their mind that is happening so fast, and they can't keep up. So you become so distracted that you can't focus on one thing, not even brushing your teeth or showering or doing a simple task like cooking and finishing. So you become completely dysfunctional. And that's how I became. So my parents had to take me to hospital, of course. They took me to Madare, and at Madare I stayed there for about almost 2 months, and this was the second admission at Mathare. And after that, I had a bit of a sober phase between January of 2022. I went to hospital in November of 2021, and I left in January of 2022. So between that time, between January of 2022 and the time when I would later go back to hospital in August of 2022, that is last year, I had a sober phase where my mind kind of came back to normal. I wasn't doing weed because the doctors uh, ended up telling me that your 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 most accurate trigger towards going back to psychosis is and delusions and mania is weed. So I didn't do weed for about 6 months, and I was okay. Although I still used to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, but um, I stayed stable for a bit. Although I was still delusional, looking back, I can see I was still delusional, but functionally delusional, because you can be a functionally delusional person if you're doing drugs and you have an underlying condition. It cannot. Sometimes it can stay undiagnosed, and it can stay docile in your body, although it's slowly setting you up for the onset. But you can still be a very functional person, but with a mental illness. So for me, I was that for about 6 months between January and June, July of 2022. That is last year. So in around August, uh, because as the reason why I decided that I'm not going to do any drugs is because cigarettes and things like cigarettes and miraa and mogoka, they become gateway drugs, like, and alcohol as well. So when you're doing them, if you're looking for that getting high, it it sets your mind to want to get higher. And for me, they they made me crave getting higher for longer and more intense highs. So I went back to smoking weed. And as soon as I went back to smoking weed, started being delusional, started saying and doing things that people weren't understanding, because all of these things are in your head. All of those storylines that of grandeur, and those storylines of things that your mind is completely making up, they're in your head, and other people cannot understand them. And I remember going back to my dad one day, because I was living with my dad in his house, and he told me, "Hey Kimani, you've gone back to smoking weed again after all he has done to you." And that's when he was like, "I think I need to take you to hospital." And he took me to hospital, and for sure they did the test, and the test came out positive for weed. Of course, I had smoked weed, so I was admitted again, And this time I stayed for like almost 3 months. And after that, it was uh, I went on a bit of an experimental journey where I was like, I knew weed was taking me back to psychosis and delusion and triggering the worst side of my bipolar. So I started almost like doing weed to see just how far it could get with it.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know, I know. So I used to do, I could smoke a lot of it, so that I can see just how bad things can get. I think it was a bit of, it was a way of, it in a sinister way, it kind of helped me because after doing it for some time, I realized it's after doing it for many, many, many times over and over and over and over again that I realized now you can't go any further. Because even if you smoke 20 blunts of weed, there's only, as you get high, you can only get so high. And past that,
There's a limit.
yeah, there's a limit. Past that, even while you're doing the weed itself, you smoke the blunt, you do like 1 2. If you're getting to the by the time you get into the third blunt, even your body will tell you, no, don't do any more of this, because it's dangerous if you keep doing this. So I finally got to the end point. To cut the long story short, and in July of this year, that was the last admission that I said, this is going to be my last admission. It was my 13th admission to the psych ward, and I said, this is going to be my last admission to psych ward. I'm not going to go back to psych ward again, because uh, I have established that one, drugs, any kind of drug, alcohol, cigarettes, mogoka, mira, any kind of drug is a trigger to my bipolar, to my mania. And two, uh, that my that I keep going back to hospital for the same thing. It brings me back to hospital. So I was like, so now I completely understood that this is what is causing me to go back to hospital. And the doctors keep telling me, as long as you keep off the weed and you take your meds, because even if you're you're not taking drugs, you never know. You could have stress as a trigger.
Yeah, yeah,
There's so many things that can happen. So it's very important for you to keep taking your meds and take them well. So uh, they told me, just take your meds well and don't do drugs and you'll be fine. So I finally accepted that, and I accepted myself as someone who's living with a condition. And finally, after 3 years, I looked back and I was like, oh, Kimani, you had a career. You were doing good on TV. You used to have a girlfriend, even. You used to have a normal life, just like everybody else. And from then I said, well, I think it's time for me to now get my act together. And that's when I started that journey. That in July of this year, and it's been 3 months off drugs, nothing. No,
congratulations.
thank you, thank you. No cigarettes, no alcohol, no weed, no mogoka, no Chavez, no nothing. Just Kimani and food, drink and water. Just being healthy. And it's my third month, and I'm doing very well.
I'm proud of you, man.
And thank you, because it was hard. It was hard, and it was hard for me. And now I think I'm going to share those photos. I have those photos in my phone. I have one particular photo that my cousin took of me when I had been, psychotic, walking around Nairobi, collecting papers and all of those things. And I went to her house looking so dirty. I have that photo. I'm gonna share it on my social media. Uh,
Can you share with the viewer too?
yes, I can show you that photo. So in this particular photo, I was completely damaged. I think I had walked for about 40 kilometers in one night. And
Are you feeling tired?
yes, I was feeling tired. That's why I
You can
slept.
only walk.
That's why I slept. In the photo, you're going to see me sleeping outside for sitting on a chair because I was so exhausted. I was so exhausted. I had walked for such a long distance. My delusions were showing me that I need to walk. I need to keep walking. I need to keep walking. I had lost my shoes. I had lost my money. I had lost my phone. I had lost everything because I had smoked weed in town, and I kept wandering and walking by myself around town and to many places. So it's eh, for me, losing my mind was never part of the plan, but I did completely lose it. I was a crazy person. Nilikuwa mwenda wazimu, ninatembea kwa barabara nikiokota makaratasi na hizo.
Wow. What a crazy story. But I'm really happy. And despite being in the psychotic ward 13 times, I'm so proud of you that you came out and you're doing very well right now. The other day you met Nyako, you did a live, it was crazy. You know, everyone loved you. You know, they did a fundraising, you got something. You also met her at the airport. How has the whole online, experience been and the reception?
I I think I am one of the people who has been. I can say I'm a privileged child because not everybody comes out with a story like this, and then people respond positively. Because um, I the way Kenyans came together and supported me to get back on my feet, it really touched my heart. And Nyako being central and part of that story really just turned my life around. I got capital to start my business because when I was in hospital, I started, after healing, I started working on a business plan, and I said, "This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start a company." And I was very clear about what I wanted to do because part of healing is journaling is part of healing, and I can say journaling is what has helped me really recover from psychosis. I've been able to have good recovery, and so by the time I came out of hospital, I had journaled enough. I had written down everything. I had written down, this is what I want to do when I get out of hospital, and Kenyans came together for me, and I'll be forever grateful and forever indebted to Kenyans for coming through for me. And I've seen another celebrity today who's come out and said he's also going through financial problems, and I'm like, yes, this is. I'm like, it's only that you called us to start the interview then, because I was about to send my contribution, and I was like, now I relate. Now I'm like, when they speak out, when you see somebody speaking out, somebody who's been in the limelight and speaking out, that and admitting that they're in financial problems, that is, it takes a lot of courage. Because the first thing that comes to mind is you think, sasa watu watanionaje, watu wataona nilitumia pesa yangu vibaya. Na ndo maana-
Normally the case.
that's not the case, because for me, the last time because I got sick, you know, ni kugonjeka. No, you see, there was a video going around. Somebody, I think I saw it on TikTok, of somebody saying that they can't contribute towards a celebrity who's saying ati achangiwe kwa sababu they're not saving, or they're too proud to do small jobs. I was like, I hope you never get sick. Whoever did that video, I hope you never get sick. I hope you never. I hope you never face tragedy that drains you financially, and you have to ask for help, whether you're a celebrity or not. These are things that everybody faces, and I'm like, now my heart has been transformed, and I've always had a big heart for people. I always like to help people, and as a person who's always helping people, when people now come back to help you, you're like, you feel so grateful, because you're like, now it's amazing, because of it's like the energy I put out in the world is coming back, and that's something that is so encouraging to see. And I am forever grateful to Kenyans for the way they came together for me, and helped me get back on my feet now. Now I have a company, it's registered, and we have a client already, who's, yeah, and And this is a client who, and they all met me through sharing my story. And when they saw my story, they reached out. They were like, Kimani, can we help you? We're here. We're an organization. We do this, and this is what we want you to help us with. And so they gave me my first gig like that, just from hearing my story. And now, I I have the joy of working. I have the joy of waking up in the morning and saying, I have an errand today to run. I have this work to do, and which is a joy or a privilege that a lot of people don't get to have, especially now that in tough economic times, so many people don't have jobs, and it takes away, being jobless takes away that dignity of being able to take care of yourself.